For over 40 years, Ron Wenzel has been collecting toys, primarily toy boats and toy motors. His collection began with an innocent trip to an antique store.
I was up in Minneapolis one day on a sales call for Lake Center, and I was in an antique shop. I had some time to kill between meetings. We didn't have cell phones in those days, so I stopped in an antique shop and I found a toy boat and a toy outboard motor in a box. And it was exactly the same kind that I had when I was a child. And I put it in Lake Winona, and it sailed away and sank. So I never got it back, and I finally found one just like it. And that's what really started me on the toy boats and toy outboard motors that I have in my collection. And I've been collecting them for about 45 years, and I always got room for one more. I would say there's probably about 800 boats and about 400 toy outboard motors, and some other nautical memorabilia. As a kid, I worked at Whitaker Marine and at Murtis's Boat Harbor, and I guess I've always fallen in love with boats. I've been a river rat since I was about 9 or 10 years old, and so I worked at Whitaker Marine building houseboats before I went into the service, Navy of course, and so I've always just kind of latched on to nautical toys. I also have about 350 outboard motor oil cans, probably one of the larger collections around. And like I say, I collect a lot of nautical items. There's always something out there that's associated with boats and motors, so it's not too hard to find something, but it's getting harder to find something I don't have. This was probably one of the first outboard motors built. Back in probably 1910, 1912, and they were pretty primitive, as you can see. The motor did not turn when it was on the transom. The rudder turned only, and it was a gas model, one cylinder, and functions very well at that time. I have to say that the Indian is my favorite. This was made by a gentleman in Florida, and there were only 10 of them built. And everything is very, very intricate, as you can see, right down to the casting on the flywheel, and it runs. It's an operable motor, right down to the detail. And it was made by Indian Motorcycles, and they only made them for 2 years, back in the early 30s. And this was the cooling. They had no water pumps on them, and this was all done through cooling. It was an air-cooled engine. And like I say, there's only a couple of them made, 10 of them, and I was lucky enough to be on the list to purchase one of them. The gentleman that built them took them 4 or 5 years to do. As you can see, there's a lot of tooling in here, and everything is exact. They're beautiful engines. One of my prizes. There was a company out there called K&O Manufacturing that after World War II, 2 Air Force guys got together and formed a company, and they got rights from Mercury Motors, Scott Atwater, Evinrude Johnson. They got rights to reproduce the toys. So they formed a company, and all those were made in Japan up until 1962. And there were some really odd ones made. Oliver tractors. Oliver sold outboard motors. Indian Motorcycle in the 30s sold outboard motors. Firestone. They're either gas or electric, and everything in my collection runs except some of the models that were made out of wood that are exact replicas. I'm building a Batman boat from the early 60s. I acquired a model made by Ideal Model Company, and we are duplicating that, and I've started 3 of those. They're almost pretty close to 4.5 feet long, and there'll only be 3 built, and kind of exciting, but it's been fun. And the big thing about it is, I think, is I've met so many people. It's a social thing. It's like going to coffee with friends. You meet new friends every day. Of course, the older I get, the more new friends I meet, as I forget what they look like. But it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun.